to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you.
I know we're already here, but I just want to appreciate our two city representatives, all right, Mr. Pollock and Mr. Tucker, for giving us a quorum today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Because we have to do the budget, and I know Mr.
Our next item, Rosa, is the agenda review. Do we have any changes or do we have any board members want to share anything on the agenda review? Rosa?
We do have an agenda revision for item 10 to the agenda title and to recommendation number 1 of the board letter to include the addition of the approval of $15,000 for closing costs and authorization for the air pollution control officer or his designee to approve minor non-substantive changes to the purchase and sale agreement subject to county council review and approval. That is all.
Okay, thank you, Rosa. Any comments from the board members? Any revisions or other items? Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
Move the recommended action.
Do we have a second? To 5. Okay, so
Well, to amend the agenda to include the items.
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you.
okay.
Looking at
I need a second.
Second.
Okay, Bennett and Parks, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's approved. Item 6, we have public comments. I don't have any comment cards at all.
We have no public comment, but we also need to approve the minutes of the May 10th.
Okay, and let's approve how about the minutes? Any motion on the minutes?
Move the minutes.
Second?
First and second, all in favor?
Do you have one abstention?
And one abstention?
Okay.
Okay, that's approved. No public comments? Rosa?
No public comments, sir.
Cards, okay. Any board comments? Members of matter that you might want to share with the board? Annie?
Just a note that Senator Pavley was able to get some legislation through to deal with emissions coming from methane gas, and something I think that's going to make sure that the rules that are in play are actually enforceable.
Okay, thank you. Then our next item is a public hearing. That's the adoption of the Ventura County Air Pollution Control District's fiscal year 2016-2017. Michael?
Good afternoon, Chair Zaragoza, members of the board. I'm Mike Villegas. The slide presentation should be popping up in just a second here. I gotta think we're hearing you on that.
Yeah,
There you go.
They just came on.
here it is.
This is a hearing strictly to review the district's proposed fiscal year 16-17 budget. As you're aware, the district actually has two budgets, our operating budget and our pass-through grant budget. And I'm going to be focusing on the operating budget because that actually affects our bottom line. And this is because on the pass-through grant budget, all of the expenditures have equivalent revenue. As you can see, the district would have a total budget of $10.3 million, made up of an operating budget of $8.5 million and a pass-through grant budget of just over $1.8 million. And I'm going to be discussing the net cost in great detail in this presentation. It's key that it's a projected net cost, and excluding contingency, we're looking at a projected net cost of $426,000. This is very similar to the $410,000 projected net cost we've had a year ago. Another thing to keep in mind is our budget contains a very conservative estimate of $102,000 in fines, and I think we can comfortably say we're going to be expecting at least $100,000 in additional revenue in this area. So we're looking at a lower net cost, and every year I say it's only going to be $100,000 more, and I think that there's not going to be a big NOV settlement, and for some reason, I'm wrong. So people just keep making mistakes. Expenditures up nearly $170,000, revenue up by $153,000, and we have one budget increment request. The increment request is, once again, we have $25,000 available for motor vehicle emission reduction projects. This money will need to be passed through. We can utilize these funds for our programs related to motor vehicles internally, but once you've done that, the money needs to be passed through to external projects. Looking at the expenditure side, we're seeing most of the increase coming from an increase in salaries and employee benefits. We are expecting some adjustments to salaries and benefits in the coming renewal of the contracts with the unions and the management resolution. Services and supplies are definitely up, and this is mostly for permitting services we're contracting with related to the power plants, and we're contracting with the San Joaquin Valley Unified Air Pollution Control District. Their modeler is known as one of the best in the state at this type of work. Fixed assets down $23,000, and this is because we replaced most of our obsolete monitoring equipment in prior fiscal years. This graphic just shows our expenditures, and with most technical agencies, this is what it looks like, and sure enough, salaries and employee benefits account for nearly 70% of our expenditures. On the revenue side, we're seeing an increase in $153,000, but this is in large part due to anticipated revenue from power plant permitting work. Basically, we'll be receiving permit processing fees there. And then we had the 2% increase in permit renewal fees. When you look at our revenue, the big three are the DMV fees at $2.9 million, permit fees $3 million, and our federal grant at $1.1 million. Other fees are mostly made up of our source test observation fees under our Rule 47. We also have some minor air toxics fees that we assess also. In the big picture, we still continue to operate and meet our mandates with reduced staffing, and this is another item we're going to have taking another step towards tightening our belts later on in this agenda. When you look at the stationary source program, the revenue from fees and grants is not quite covering the costs related to stationary source programs, and that's why we're having these modest increases in permit renewal fees. On the motor vehicle side, the money we collect via the DMV fees is adequate to cover all our costs related to motor vehicle programs, including a portion of our monitoring program. So that's handled quite nicely. And then, of course, we had the 2% increase in permit renewal fees. And I think that with the approach we're taking, very gradual increase, is allowing us to keep our fund balance at a healthy level, and we're continue to tighten our belt as we do this. Over time, we've seen very slight decreases in the federal grant. However, when you factor in inflation, the purchasing power of the federal grant is definitely eroding over time. State subvention is level at $200,000, which is good, and it's unfortunate when you consider all of the mandates under the California Clean Air Act. We're receiving $200,000, which doesn't quite line up well there. On the incentive programs, we're doing a good job of utilizing all the administrative funds and being able to operate our programs just with the funds that are allocated for that, including county council and the fiscal staff with the incentive programs. We have a very healthy fund balance that's more than adequate to cover the projected net cost, and I'm going to cover why I think that's just a projected net cost. I think the reason the district keeps coming forward with net savings on an annual basis is we're very careful in budgeting and you need to be conservative. When you look at replacing monitoring equipment, you have to look at the price now, factor in the fact that it could be more expensive the next year. But when we go to spend that money, we work very diligently to make sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck, and it looks like a lot of times we come in under budget. When you look at salaries, the only real way to project with your budget is that you're going to have staff in those positions throughout the year. But when you look at our demographics, we're just starting that step where we're seeing a retirement every 6 months, and it's going to pick up the pace. And the reality is after retirement, many times there is a lag time before you can get that new employee on board, and there's salary savings then. The other thing, and there's really no way to project this, is in most every case, the person retiring is topped out. They're an engineer 2 or an air quality specialist 2. They're replaced by an employee at a lower salary rate, so you have several years of additional salary savings. And that's what I think is really playing out here. When you see me come to your board with the best budget projections we believe we can make, and we show a projected net cost of $400,000, and then it looks like we're going to have a net savings north of $300,000, just because we're very careful when we spend the money. And then, like I said, with salaries and employee benefits, just the fact we're entering that phase of retirements, we're going to see savings there.
And that's good. It's good that we have.
It is.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're in that lag without the employee, it's not very much fun, but.
It helps the fund.
Looking at the fund balance, as you can see, we have money set aside for fixed asset acquisition, litigation, motor vehicle fee projects, and funds to cover the projected net cost, including contingency. And we also have $5.5 million set aside for building acquisition. And I think in the long term, that building acquisition is really going to help with our annual operating costs. And then if you look at the unassigned fund balance, it's $7 million. I told you we're probably going to end up adding to that at this end of this fiscal year. So we're doing quite good, because if you look at the upper fund balance target for the unassigned fund balance, it would be 6 months of our operating expenditures, so that'd be half would be $4.25 million. So you can see we're doing quite well, and like I said, that'll probably climb a little bit after this fiscal year. Lastly, looking at the fund balance, you see the impact of the potential purchase of the building. But then when you look out to fiscal year 18-19, you can see we're in very good shape. And then after that, we're looking at revenue enhancements, modest fee increases there, and we're going to have to look at program reductions, just because that's really the only way to make the budget balance. It really is. The good news is, I think with the latest step down in the ozone standard, I think we're getting close to the end, I hope, in that progress, because I just don't see how areas such as South Coast and the San Joaquin Valley can reach the 70 in the foreseeable future. It looks like we can do it, but it's going to be quite a challenge. And I think we're getting to the point where the health studies are beginning to show questionable benefit going any lower than that. So hopefully we're getting towards the end there, and we're going to be able to finish our jobs here in Ventura County and do it in a cost-effective manner. That's all I have on the budget. I'll be happy to take questions.
So, Mike, the increases in our revenues because of the fines that people didn't pay attention, they got a fine?
Really what we did is we've always budgeted at about $100,000 in fines, and this was a request from the regulated community. They felt if we budgeted higher, that would be in essence setting a ticket quota, and there would be pressure to achieve that number. Whereas, our inspector should go out. If there's a violation, there's a fine, but we shouldn't be counting on that revenue. And it just seems every year somebody really makes a good mistake. And
that helps us with the fines. And then the other is the salary savings that you mentioned.
Exactly. I think I was talking to Board Member Pollack, and it's the same thing. Many of our workforces are getting into that demographic where we're seeing the baby boomers are starting to retire, and they're going to do it in large numbers. And like I said, you're just going to get salary savings when that occurs.
I'm going to open the public hearing. Does the board members have any questions? I'm going to open the public hearing. I don't have any speakers for the public hearing. Then we'll close the public hearing then. Any comments from the board for Mike? Just excellent job. Good budget, like always, very, very conservative.
One comment, I just appreciate you building in modest increase in the fees. That's the way for us to, have that be modest rather than at some point in time finding ourselves needing to do a big increase. So.
Yeah, if you look very carefully at the revenue graphs over time, I am trying to grow the percentage of the pie that is the permit fees, because we were low compared to when you looked at percentage-wise compared to some other air districts. And the caution I always have for the board and staff is that some of that is because we received the federal grant. And like I said, sooner or later, EPA is going to be forced to reallocate that grant. And we have non-attainment areas in California that receive no federal grant dollars. And we have some agencies that are attainment receiving federal grant dollars. And I think we're going to be, during the reallocation, on a per capita basis, I'm certain our funding is going to go down.
Thank you. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
We got a motion first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Thank you, that's approved, Michael, your budget. Our next item is item 9, is receive and file the comprehensive audit for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2015.
Yeah, our external auditor, Vavrnik Trinan Day, recently completed a comprehensive audit of the district for the year ending June 30, 2015, so that's fiscal year 14-15. Because we receive a federal grant via the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, we are required to have this audit annually. I'm pleased to let you know that the audit did not find any material weaknesses in our financial systems. I need to commend Nancy Mendoza and Leonie Macaray for their excellent work in maintaining our financial records.
Is Nancy here? Raise your hand. Thank
And
you,
Leonie.
good job. Good work.
Also wanted you to know that Roger Alfaro is here from VTD if you have
Okay.
any questions. And I know one thing that had come up in the past is, as the district, we use the same auditor as the county just because we're using the same financial system. So it works out a lot better to have someone familiar with the county accounting system. The other thing to keep in
And just for
mind.
information too, LAFCO does the same thing, right? Commissioner Parks?
Exactly.
Yeah, we discussed that before. And
I know there's been concern in the past where you should get a fresh set of eyes looking at your books every year. But one thing that VTD does, and I think is important to note, is they do rotate the auditors. So we do get new staff coming in every year.
Oh, I see, it's the same agency or same company, but with different auditors. Oh,
That's
okay.
right.
Okay, good.
So Roger's here from VTD, and if you have any questions, just let us know.
Do you have any questions of the auditor? No? What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move adoption.
Got a first
Second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Auditor. Thank you so much. Okay. Our next item 10 is the approval of the purchase of the sale agreement between Ventura County Air Pollution Control District and Tele Ventura LP, a California limited partnership for the purchase of real property located at 4567 Telephone Road in Ventura for $5,475,000. Mike?
Well, the project to locate a building to serve as our office and house our laboratory has been quite a process. It's been going on for many years, but I think we're about to take a major step forward. As you're aware, the district has a sizable fund balance, and we're currently paying about $500,000 annually in rent and building maintenance costs. By purchasing a building, we'll be utilizing a portion of our fund balance on a one-time cost and be purchasing a real asset. And this is, I believe, the most correct way to handle the funds, using it for a one-time cost versus partially offsetting some of your ongoing costs to rent a building. Our estimates show that we can purchase this existing building in Ventura at a lower cost than a build-to-suit option at other locations we had looked at. While it would have been wonderful to have a one-story building, I believe that this building in Ventura does have some unique advantages. First, proximity to the government center will definitely be a benefit. But the major advantage I see is rental income. This building is larger than the district needs in and of itself. We're looking at needing approximately 20,000 square feet. There's one tenant in the building, and if you keep them there, there'll be 21,000 square feet available to the district. They are on a long-term lease through 2023 with option to renew. They would be providing over $260,000 annually in income to the district as owner of the building, which would go a long way towards offsetting our maintenance and operations costs. The other advantage, and it's kind of unique, is there are two other tenants in the building in addition to the one long-term tenant, with their leases expiring the middle of 2017. So currently, the monthly income from the three tenants is $43,000 a year, which will allow us to handle the operating costs of a building we can't move in until next year, and provide some cost deferment to our existing rent at our existing location. So it's going to help us out
So, Mike, we can, if it's approved, we can close escrow,
fairly quick.
start collecting rent, and not be able to move until it's,
Until it's time to start the tenant improvements.
so we're getting monies as we, okay.
I think the other benefit we have is, and I didn't see it at first, was when you look at getting ready for the tenant improvements, the earthquake retrofit, and energy efficiency issues, having that year to work with GSA and with the Regional Energy Alliance, I think we can put together a good project on the tenant improvements, earthquake, and energy efficiency. And I think GSA is going to be a great part. When I look at that parking lot, they're the folks I want to be consulting with. So,
Now that you're bringing that up, that was the point I wanted to make today, and that is, we have this in front of us, and I don't want to muddy the waters with this, but the current building that we're in on Telephone Road, we've had improvements made, and that's now a green status. It seems to me that as you talk about energy efficiency, since we have this time, that we ought to, if you have to bring it back to us or whatever, but we ought to make this a green energy building. It may cost us a little bit more when we first go in, but with energy costs going up, with water costs going up, it actually, I think, it would be consistent with what we're doing, which is what we're trying to do is lock in our long-term, keep our long-term rent down by making a major investment at this point in time. I don't think it would be, so I'd like to hear a report about what would it take to achieve that. We're in a building that's currently green LEED status. Our counterparts in Santa Barbara County, for example, their building is gold LEED status. I think as the Air Pollution Control District that if it is if it's even break even, but particularly if it's long-term cost effective, we ought to at least be setting that kind of standard for ourselves. So again, I don't want to complicate this motion here. We do this, but I'd like to hear a report back and bring it to the board about us achieving that. Well, since we do have time, we're not moving in until 2017.
Commissioner Parks?
I would just say that some things in the actual LEED qualifications and all are, I think, unduly expensive in that process. So just seeing that we get this stuff in place, I think, is the important part as opposed to jumping through the specific hoops of the LEED.
And can we just close escrow maybe and then in 1 year look at the feasibility of converting that?
Certainly, I think in this, once we close escrow and getting ready for that date where the improvements start, that's the time to work with GSA, the Regional Energy Alliance, and make sure that we
Right.
aren't leaving
So-
any grant money or assistance. There is assistance for public agencies in these projects, so.
I think the motion that's appropriate that I would make is that we close escrow and we get a report back from you. And the report
Absolutely.
back is, what's the best way for us to go to accomplish
That's a good point.
accomplish the goal, which is really great energy efficiencies that save us money in the long run, and also meet the ethical responsibility we have to be leaders in terms of what we're doing there.
Supervisor.
What was that statement? You said to close, don't close escrow till we get?
close escrow.
Close.
To vote to close escrow, but so
Proceed with
part of the
it,
motion
yeah.
to say,
Okay.
get a report
And
back
then look
from
at it.
Mike
Right.
as to
I second
what
that.
are the benefits and
You got a
what's
first and a
the-
second. Mike, do you have anything else?
That's it.
Okay, that's a first and a second. That includes the $15,000 closing cost that
Yes.
was amended. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, you got a building. Thank you. Thank you. Our next item is the approval of it.
Could I just also thank Keith Filligar, too?
Keith,
Being able to
thank
find
you
this
so much,
building
Keith.
was great, in lieu of the situation we were in, this is much better. Thank you.
Good job, Keith. Thank you. Our next item is approval of a 2.5 merit increase for the Air Pollution Control District, Officer / Executive Officer, effective June 5th, 2016.
Good afternoon, Chair Zaragoza and members of the board. I'm Sean Otten, the county's Human Resources Director, and with this item, we recommend that your board approve a 2.5% merit increase for the Air Pollution Control District Executive Officer effective June 5th. The APCD Standing Committee has recommended the 2.5% increase in recognition of Mr. Villegas's accomplishments and management. The district budget in FY 15-16 is sufficient to cover the increased cost, as is the 2016-17 budget. The approved budget will be able to absorb the additional costs also.
Thank you, Sean. I'd like to say, that at the Standing Committee, the evaluation that was given to Mike was just outstanding. I think it was, about from 100%, he was about 99.9%.
It was a very favorable recognition of Mr. Villegas's accomplishments.
Yeah, and I'd like to share something else. In the Standing Committee, we recommended a higher merit increase, but he was very humble to say, no, I'd like to have a lower rate, and I just want to commend you for that because, he's just a very conservative person with a very conservative budget with a good staff. So, thank you, Michael.
Not being in the committee, but just wanted to weigh in too, and just saying how we have over the years seen great work from your department and from you, and then also from the requests that we had in terms of performance, just seeing you excel in those specific areas
That's right.
we've asked for. So it's just great to see, and thank you for your conservativeness.
Yes, thank you. Okay, second. First and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Just to-
opposed?
If I can just make one comment.
Tucker?
Mike, I'd really like to express my gratitude to your leadership. And the time that I've been on this committee, you've really shined and are a great example of a positive leader. So, thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, I just want to let your board know that I really cherish working here. When you look at how it worked out for me, I ended up in an air district where you could actually achieve the standards with hard work, whereas I look to the south and everyone's still looking at the black box and how they're going to do that. So, and I also looked to the south and I saw what happened to that APCO into the north, and I'm very happy to have a job. So,
Thank you, Michael. Good job. Our next item is approval of the deletion of one vacant position, allocation classified as APCD, AQ Specialist 2, and to be effective June 14th, 2016.
we had an air quality specialist 2 retire in February of this year. They were working in our compliance division on our voluntary trip reduction program, which over the years we've coordinated more and more with Ventura County transportation staff. And we looked at things and said, working with VCTC, we can absorb the existing work with another air quality specialist we had at our planning division, so we're proposing to delete this position. I think it's the appropriate time to do that. No one's losing a job, and when you look at the future with the declining federal grant, I think it's the prudent thing to do.
Good first and second from Paula. All in favor? Any opposed? That's approved.
Mr. Chair, just one other thing. I know we're scheduled to come back 2 weeks from now, or you're trying to set that up. I would just like to ask, 2 weeks from now, this board is dark. I'm concerned that we have to adopt our budget, and if this board is dark and we barely made it for a quorum today, it's going to be even harder to make it for a quorum when the board is dark. I'd like to direct the APCD to make sure that you get the budget, first read of the budget to us before the board goes dark.
Good point.
In other words, so that you can have the second hearing. They have to wait 2 weeks. We meet again next week, but they can't bring it back next week. They have to wait 2 weeks, my understanding. Right?
Yes.
It's
So
2 weeks,
you have to schedule this. You got to look at the board's agenda. And we got to look at the board schedule. We should have had this scheduled, before
On the
this.
7th, exactly.
On the 7th, so that we could be doing the second hearing next week. So I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm not sure what my schedule is going to be. And my guess is a whole lot of people with the board being dark aren't ready to commit 100%.
That's a good point. To council, what happens if we don't have a quorum? And
That's a good one on the spur of the moment. Let's see how good he is at this. Right?
Right. I believe you need a quorum to take action, and so you won't be able to adopt the budget.
So we'd have no budget.
No
for Mike
budget?
going into.
Can we-
That wouldn't be good.
Can we pick it up the following meeting? Is that permissible? No? Yes?
Well, I have consulted with Carmen Ramirez, John Sharkey, and Mike Morgan. They were available.
They are.
Doug Tucker was available. So
Mr. Paula?
so
Oh, great.
Oh, so
I think
we
we're going to
We
make
got
it.
6. Good.
We'll have a quorum then.
Great.
And we'll be in D.C., getting an award that we're very proud of.
But if you'll build that in, every year we seem to have.
Yeah, well, I'm
this
going to
year,
have, yes.
Because we have to have the thing 2 weeks after, so if you'll build that in next year, I'd appreciate that.
As soon as I see that Board of Supervisors agenda, that's going to be my tickler to schedule
Mike,
too.
Mike, do you want to share real quickly, I'm not sure it's not the agenda, but the award we're going to get in D.C.?
John and I will not be here. The vessel speed reduction received a Clean Air Excellence Award, and we're going to be heading out to receive that award on the 28th. I've also scheduled meetings that morning with the NACA director and Congresswoman Brownlee's office, and still trying to get into Congressman Knight's office.
Yeah.
I think you won't be here either then.
That's right.
Yeah, wow, all right.
Okay, so I don't have any additional items, so we'll adjourn. Thank you.
Right, yeah, that's great.
Good luck with the rest of your meeting.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, we got a long one today, right? Take care.
Too late tonight.
Yeah.